to have a mushroom sauce that we would serve in the restaurant, and that sauce really came about from making our mushroom soup. And then I basically just condensed that soup into a sauce that we would serve with our duck fat potatoes in the restaurants. We're going to show you how to make that soup. So lots of mushrooms. We've got a whole heap of button mushrooms. You can use any mushroom you want. Firstly, what I want to do is I want to chop all these in half. All right, so I'm just going to cut these mushrooms in half. I'm going to start them in the pan. So I'll start the cooking process in the pan. Then they'll go into a roasting tray and into the oven. And we'll roast them for about 20 minutes. Because what you're doing when you're going through that roasting process is you're driving moisture out. And mushrooms are like a big sponge. There's a lot of moisture in a mushroom. So you'll notice that when you're cooking mushrooms, when you put them into the pan, it looks like the pan's like loaded up with mushrooms, then eventually they all collapse. They collapse because the heat in the pan is driving that moisture out. And as you drive that moisture out and it turns to steam and disappears, you're intensifying the flavour in the mushroom. So we're trying to do that. We're trying to intensify that flavour, but we're also trying to create the Maillard effect. So that caramelisation that we talk about, that roasty, toasty flavour that you get when you cook things, we're trying to get that effect. And that's just the browning of the mushroom. All right, so I'll chop all these in half, pop them into our pan. Some butter, oil, and salt is all we need to start with. Start that cooking process, and then once we've got a little bit of colour on our mushrooms and they're well coated, we'll pop them into our oven tray. Mushrooms have been in the oven for about 20 minutes, so I can take them out now. So you can see we're starting to get that colour that I was talking about. The garlic that we threw in there has started to colour as well. So that can all go back into a saucepan now. I've got my sauté pan, so I'll pop all this back in there. And then we start building the soup around all of this mushroom flavour. Now, while my mushrooms were in the oven, I steeped some dried mushrooms. So I just had a mixture of dried forest mushrooms, which we just added some hot water to and allowed that to steep. You could add the dried mushrooms in there as well if you wanted to, but I find that once they've been steeped, they go a little bit bitter. So I'm just going to drain basically our mushroom stock in with our mushrooms, and then I'll add some chicken stock to that as well, and turn that on and reduce it by about half. So that'll take probably about 10 more minutes to reduce that down. Because we're creating a mushroom soup, I'm only going to reduce this by about half. But if I was doing that mushroom sauce, I'd reduce this down by probably a little bit over half, and then see how my quantities are when I add the cream. So I wouldn't add as much cream. Instead of adding a cup of cream, I'd probably add half a cup of cream. You just end up with a thicker sauce instead of a thinner soup. Blitzed my soup, just popped it back into a small pot just to re-warm it. And then the final thing I want to add is a little bit of this truffle paste. It's about a teaspoon of truffle paste. Truffle's a mushroom, same family, a fantastic combination. And then while you're bringing that back up to the right temperature. Just stir that truffle paste in. If you want to thin it out a little bit more, this is where you can add a little bit of extra cream or a little bit of extra stock. But I like it to be quite thick. I want it to, if I'm having this with some sourdough or crusty bread, I want to be able to sort of dip it in and hold onto that sourdough or crusty bread. So I like it nice and thick. And then finish with some fresh herbs just to give it, because this is going to be quite rich, because we started in the pan, we've oven roasted it, it's got cream in there, it's going to be quite rich, so a little bit of freshness helps. You can pick your favourite, but I actually think fennel goes really well with mushrooms. So I'm going to pop some fennel fronds on top of this one. Like I said, perfect for crusty bread, just to sort of drag your bread through that and have that soup stick to it is fantastic.